The cold seeps up from the floorboards first, a damp, insistent chill that works its way through the wool of your stockings and into the very marrow of your bones. Outside, the pre-dawn gray of a Philadelphia morning is thick with the smell of wet coal smoke and something else. Something acrid and sharp, like iron and anxiety. The last ember in the hearth has died, leaving a faint, powdery scent of ash that does nothing to warm the air. This single moment, suspended between a restless sleep and a dreaded awakening, is the only peace you're going to get. This is the reality of being on the wrong side of a revolution. It isn't about grand speeches and glorious cavalry charges. It's about the quiet, gnawing fear in the small hours of the morning. Tonight we're going to step directly into that fear. You're a Loyalist wife in 1776, trapped in a city that's decided your loyalty is a crime, and you're about to lose everything. It's a story about how quickly a home can become a cage, and how survival sometimes looks a lot like treason. We often think of history in terms of winners and losers, but the truth is, most people were just trying not to get crushed in the middle. So hey everyone, welcome back. Before you get too comfortable in this particularly uncomfortable time period, and only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here, maybe take a quiet moment to like the video and subscribe. It's the little bell that lets the algorithm know we're still here, whispering stories in the dark. I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, go ahead and dim your lights. Maybe you have a fan you can turn on for that soft ambient hum. Let's get settled, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're already awake, of course. You haven't truly slept in days. You lie perfectly still under the heavy quilt, your eyes tracing the familiar cracks in the plaster ceiling. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant shout from the street below sends a jolt through your system. You're listening for one sound and one sound only. The solid, confident footstep of your husband George, returning from his surveying trip. He was meant to be back 2 days ago. You are a surveyor's wife, which is a lonely occupation. You've grown accustomed to the empty space in the bed beside you, to managing the household on your own for weeks at a time. A humble life, but a good one. Or it was. A part of you, the jealous, pessimistic part that you keep tucked away like a tarnished silver locket, has always resented his work, resented the way it took him from you, the way he seemed more married to his charts and compasses than to the woman waiting for him at home. It's a wretched thought, and you feel the familiar shame curl in your stomach. Now, that resentment has curdled into a thick, choking dread. The knock on the door is not his. It's too sharp, too quick. Not the weary rap of a man returning home from a long journey. It's the sound of impatience, of official business. You slide out of bed, your bare feet recoiling from the icy floor. You don't bother with a robe, just pull your thin nightgown tighter around you as you descend the narrow staircase. The gray light filtering through the front window silhouettes the man standing on your stoop. You see his shape before you see his face, and your heart sinks. It's not a soldier, it's not a town official, it's worse. It's family. You unlatch the door and pull it open just enough to see him. Francis Marion, your cousin. His face is ruddy from the morning chill, and he gives you a smile that never, ever reaches his eyes. He's a dock worker, your Francis, a man who knows the tides of the Delaware River, as well as he knows the shifting allegiances of the men who work its ports. He claims to be a loyalist, like you and George, but you know Francis's only true loyalty is to himself. Martha, he says, his voice a low, conspiratorial rumble. He pushes past you into the entryway, bringing the damp, fishy smell of the docks with him. You're alone? Good. Francis, what is it? Is it George? You ask, your voice barely a whisper. Your hands are trembling, so you clasp them together in front of you. He doesn't answer right away. He just looks around the small, tidy room, his eyes lingering on the silver candlesticks on the mantelpiece, on the mahogany clock your father gave you for your wedding. He's assessing, calculating. It's what he does. You should have a fire going, he says, finally looking at you. It's cold. Francis, your voice is sharper now. Tell me. He lets out a long, theatrical sigh, a performance of sorrow. There was an incident, a skirmish, out past the Schuylkill River, George's surveying party. He pauses, letting the words hang in the cold air. They were mistaken for redcoat spies by a patriot militia patrol. Quote, the world doesn't shatter. It simply dissolves. The edges of the room soften and blur. The ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece seems to grow louder, each tick a hammer blow against your skull. Mistaken. A word so small, so utterly inadequate for the cataclysm it describes. You feel a strange sense of detachment, as if you're watching this scene unfold from across the room, watching a pale, thin woman in a nightgown receive the news that her life is over. No, you say. The word has no force. It's just a puff of air. I'm sorry, Martha. Truly. Francis places a hand on your arm. His hand is rough and calloused, but his touch feels clammy, insincere. He's gone. Grief is a strange, hollow thing. It's not the weeping, screaming sorrow you've read about in books. It's a sudden, crushing emptiness, a void where your future used to be. The pessimistic part of you rears its head, whispering, I knew it. I knew something like this would happen. The jealousy you felt for his work curdles into a hot, black guilt that burns the back of your throat. If you had just insisted he stay, if he hadn't been so committed to mapping King George's lands. But grief is a luxury, and you can't afford it. Not now, because as the initial shock recedes, a new, colder emotion takes its place. Fear. A primal, animal fear that prickles your skin and quickens your breath. Francis sees it in your eyes. He's a predator, and he can smell it. He squeezes your arm, his grip tightening. You need to listen to me, Martha. This is more than just a tragedy. This is a complication. Quote, what are you talking about? George was a known loyalist, he says, his voice dropping even lower. A crown surveyor. In this city, right now, that's as good as being a spy. You hear the whispers in the streets, the talk in the taverns. They're making lists. Enemies of liberty, they call them. He leans in closer, his breath smelling of stale ale. They'll come for the house. The crown paid for it, didn't it? They'll say it belongs to the new government. They'll seize everything. Every word is a carefully placed stone, building a wall of panic around you. You look past him, through the window, at the street you've known your whole life. You see Mrs. Gable sweeping her stoop across the way. You see the baker's boy making his morning rounds. Yesterday, they were your neighbors. Today, are they your enemies? Are they the ones making lists? The Patriots' anger is something you understand, even if you don't share it. You've seen their pamphlets, heard their speeches about tyranny and freedom. To them, you are not a grieving widow. You are the wife of a traitor. What am I supposed to do? You ask, the words catching in your throat. You hate how weak you sound, how much you need him right now. And there it is. The flicker of triumph in his manipulative eyes. He's been waiting for that question. I can help you, he says smoothly. I have friends. On the docks. Captains who aren't asking too many questions, if the price is right. They're taking loyal families north, to Quebec, to Canada, where it's still safe. Quote, Canada. It sounds like the other side of the moon, a frozen, foreign wilderness. I can't just leave, you stammer, looking around at your home, at the life George built. You can't stay, he hisses, his false sympathy gone, replaced by a raw urgency that is far more terrifying. They tar and feather men in the street for drinking a toast to the king, Martha. What do you think they'll do to the widow of a known crown surveyor living in a house paid for by a royal charter? You are in danger, right now. He releases your arm and steps back, giving you space, letting his poison do its work. He's offered you a lifeline that feels like a noose. He's not just offering help. He's stoking your terror, making himself indispensable, with a sickening certainty that his help will come at a very steep price. Pack a bag, he commands, his voice soft again. Just the essentials. Things you can carry. Money, any jewelry you have, nothing else. I'll be back after dark. A ship leaves on the midnight tide. Quote. He turns and leaves as quietly as he came, pulling the door shut behind him, leaving you alone in the echoing silence. The house is no longer your home, it's a tomb, a trap. The smell of ash from the dead fire seems to choke you. You stand there for a long time, the cold from the floorboards numbing your feet, your mind a maelstrom of grief and fear. Then you move. You climb the stairs on unsteady legs, your hand trailing along the wall for support. In your bedroom, you pull a small leather satchel from the back of the wardrobe. Your hands move mechanically, your mind blessedly blank. You pack a change of clothes, the wool stockings, a heavy shawl. You go to your jewelry box and take the few pieces you own, your mother's pearls, a small gold brooch. Your fingers brush against your silver wedding band. You leave it. You can't bear to touch it. Your eyes fall on George's drafting table in the corner, his instruments laid out neatly, waiting for him. A compass, a ruler, a half-finished map of the Pennsylvania frontier. Your heart gives a painful lurch. You pick up a small, heavy brass sextant, its metal cool and solid in your trembling hand. An object he loved. An object you resented. You wrap it carefully in a spare chemise and place it in the bag. It's the only part of him you can take with you. You sink onto the edge of the bed, the meager bag at your feet. The weight of it is nothing compared to the weight in your chest. The weight of grief, the weight of fear, and the weight of a new, horrifying label. Traitor. You are a loyalist. A Tory. An enemy. You are packing a bag to flee your home, your country, your entire life, all because of a loyalty you're not even sure you feel anymore. You only know that your husband is dead, and you are alone, and the world outside your window is waiting to devour you. The whispers of war have finally become screams, and they are screaming your name. The sun bleeds out of the sky, staining the clouds a bruised purple and orange before surrendering completely to the night. You don't watch it happen. You sit on the edge of your bed, a sentinel in your own home, the packed satchel a leaden weight at your feet. The house settles around you, groaning like a dying man. Each tick of the mahogany clock on the mantel downstairs is a second stolen. A grain of sand slipping through the hourglass of your life in this city. Your grief for George is a cold, hard stone in your gut, but the fear is a living thing, coiling and uncoiling in the darkness, its scales whispering against your ribs. The knock, when it comes, is not a knock at all. It's a soft scratching at the back door, the one that opens onto the narrow, refuse-strewn alley. It's Francis. You take a deep breath, the air thin and stale, and pick up your satchel. The brass sextant inside knocks against your hip, a cold, heavy reminder of the man you've lost and the life you're leaving behind. You don't light a lamp. You navigate the house by memory, your bare feet padding silently on the familiar floorboards. Francis is a shadow in the doorway, his face lost in the gloom. He gestures impatiently. It's time. Stay close. Don't speak to anyone. He leads you out into the alley. The air is thick with the stench of rot and damp earth. The cold is immediate and biting, a physical blow that steals your breath. The city at night is a different beast entirely. The familiar streets have transformed into a labyrinth of menacing shadows and echoing voids. Every shuttered window looks like a watching eye. Every gust of wind carries phantom whispers. Your world has shrunk to the sound of Francis's boots on the cobblestones and the frantic thumping of your own heart. He guides you through a warren of back alleys and narrow passages, keeping to the deepest shadows. You pass the back of a tavern, and a burst of raucous laughter and the clatter of tankards spills into the alley. A man starts singing a bawdy patriot song, his voice slurred and aggressive. Francis pulls you deeper into the shadows, his hand gripping your arm with painful force. You wait, barely breathing, until the moment passes. The docks aren't far, he whispers, his voice tight. We just need to cross Market Street. The patrols are thick there, but we have to risk it. Quote, it feels like a fool's plan, crossing the busiest street in the city. The pessimistic voice in your head screams that this is how it ends, caught in the open, exposed and alone. As you approach the corner, you can hear the rhythmic tread of booted feet. A patrol. Francis curses under his breath and pulls you back behind a stack of rain-slicked barrels. You press yourself against the cold, damp wood, the rough staves digging into your back. Then, from the direction of the patrol, you hear a voice. It's not the sharp bark of a command, but a cheerful, lilting tenor, humming a tune, and she swore that she'd be true to me as she sailed for America. A figure detaches from the main patrol, strolling toward your alley. He's an artilleryman, you can tell by the cut of his uniform, even in the gloom. He moves with a loose-limbed, easy gait, completely at odds with the tension gripping the city. He stops at the mouth of the alley, not because he's seen you, but seemingly just to gaze up at the sliver of moon. Lovely night for a constitutional, he says to the darkness, his voice full of an almost reckless good humor. A bit of air before turning in keeps the humors balanced, eh? Francis is rigid beside you, a statue of pure fury and fear. You hold your breath, praying the man will simply move on. Instead, he takes a step into the alley, his eyes, accustomed to the dark. Find your two frozen shapes instantly. He doesn't shout. He doesn't raise his musket. He smiles, a wide, friendly grin that catches the faint moonlight. Well now, he says, his voice dropping to a conversational murmur. This isn't the King's Highway, is it? A bit late for a stroll, you two. He looks from Francis's pale, pinched face to yours. His gaze is surprisingly sharp, taking in your travel-worn dress, the satchel clutched in your white-knuckled hand. Running from something? Or to something? Mind your own business, soldier, Francis hisses, his voice a venomous whisper. The artilleryman's smile doesn't falter. That's Micah Walker to you, and this, he gestures vaguely to the city around them, is very much my business, protecting it from those who'd do it harm. Now, a man like you, he says, his eyes fixed on Francis, skulking in the alleys, heading for the docks. I'd say you're looking for a ship, and a man taking a lady to the docks at this hour, well, that's a Loyalist flight if I ever saw one. Quote, panic, cold and sharp, pierces through you. He knows. The patrol on Market Street will have you in irons before you take 10 steps. Micah continues cheerfully, as if discussing the weather. And the sentries at the wharf? They're turning over every crate and barrel tonight. Orders from the Committee of Safety. You won't make it. What do you want? You hear yourself ask, your voice thin but clear. Micah's bright eyes shift to you. A fair question. What I want is for good people not to get themselves killed over foolishness. He takes another step closer. Your man here, he jerks his chin at Francis, is taking you the stupidest way possible. But I know a better way. Tunnels. Old smugglers' routes that run right under the city. I can get you to a boat. A real one. Not some leaky tub your cousin here probably promised you. Quote, he's a patriot, Francis snarls, grabbing your arm again. He'll turn us in. Quote, if I was going to turn you in, I'd have called my friends over already, Micah points out reasonably. They're just a shout away. No, I'm offering you a choice. Him, he nods at Francis, and a cell in the Walnut Street jail, or me, and a chance at seeing the sun rise over the Delaware from the deck of a ship. You need to decide. Right now. He isn't wrong. The patrol is still nearby. Your options are evaporating with every passing second. You look at Francis, at the desperation and self-interest warring in his eyes. You know he would abandon you in a heartbeat to save himself. Then you look at Micah Walker. He's the enemy, an artilleryman for the Continental Army. His cheerfulness feels like a mask, his adventurous spirit like a dangerous brand of madness. But his eyes hold a spark of intelligence. And his offer, as insane as it sounds, feels like the only viable path forward. Your pessimism tells you they are both traps. But one trap offers a glimmer of a chance. You say, your voice firm, looking directly at Micah, will go with you. Francis stares at you, his mouth agape with betrayal. Martha, no, She's made her choice, friend, Micah says, his tone still light, but with an underlying edge of steel. Now, I suggest you disappear before I change my mind about being charitable. For a moment, Francis looks like he might argue, but the sight of Micah's hand resting casually on the butt of his pistol is enough. With a final, hateful glare at you, he melts back into the shadows and is gone. You are alone in an alley with a soldier of the revolution. Wise choice, Micah says with a grin. This way, and do try to keep up. He leads you not toward the river, but deeper into the city's maze. He moves with a confidence that is both reassuring and unsettling. He points out a loose cobblestone here, a low-hanging beam there, his chatter a constant low hum in the darkness. You follow, your mind racing. You have just entrusted your life to a man who, by all rights, should be your jailer. Suddenly, a hellish orange light blooms at the end of a street, painting the brickwork in flickering, demonic colors. The sound reaches you a moment later, the roar of a fire, punctuated by shattering glass and panicked screams. Ah, Micah says, with no more alarm than if he'd spotted a puddle. Looks like the Sons of Liberty are having a party. Quote, he leads you to the corner, you peer around the edge of a building, and your breath catches in your throat. A fine townhouse, not unlike your own, is engulfed in flames. Black smoke billows into the night sky, carrying with it the desperate cries of those trapped inside. Figures run frantically in the street below, some trying to form a bucket brigade, others simply watching, their faces lit by the terrible fire. You see men with axes and torches, their faces contorted with rage, ensuring no one tries to save the property. A printer's house, Micah explains, his voice unnervingly calm. He was publishing pamphlets, arguing for reconciliation with the Crown. The brutality is stark. Absolute. This isn't a war of armies and battlefields. It's a war of neighbors and alleyways, of whispers and fire. The weight of it settles on you, a physical pressure that makes it hard to breathe. Your home. They could have done that to your home. Micah pulls you back before you can be seen. No time to spectate. There'll be patrols everywhere now. He guides you down another alley, his pace quickening. He seems to know exactly which way to turn to avoid the converging patrols, his path a strange, winding dance through the city's underbelly. He's more than just a soldier. He's a master of this treacherous new landscape. But as you hurry after him, a cold seed of doubt begins to sprout amidst your fear. He avoids the patrols too easily. His cheerfulness in the face of such horror feels wrong, inhuman. And his route, it's not direct. You realize with a jolt that you just passed the back of Carpenter's Hall, where the Congress meets. A heavily guarded, strategic location. Why would a secret escape route pass so close? A little while later, you recognize the silhouette of the steeple of Christ Church, where several Patriot leaders are known to worship. It feels less like he's hiding you from the Patriots, and more like he's parading you past their strongholds. The pattern is too neat, too convenient. He's not just leading you to a boat, he's leading you on a tour. But to what end? The thought sends a fresh wave of ice through your veins. You clutch the satchel tighter, the cold brass of the sextant, a useless, heavy weight, and follow your cheerful, terrifying guide deeper into the burning heart of the city. That cold seed of doubt blossoms into full-blown terror. The tour is over. Micah grabs your wrist, his grip surprisingly strong, all trace of his earlier whimsy gone. "They've seen us," he says, his voice a low, urgent command. "Run." And you do. The city, which was a labyrinth of shadows, now becomes a death trap of sound and light. Behind you, a whistle splits the night. A sharp, piercing signal. It's answered by another, farther off. They are coordinating. They are hunting you. The casual, rhythmic tread of patrols is replaced by the frantic, uneven pounding of running feet on cobblestone. A shout echoes down a cross street. "There! The alley by the Chandlers!" Micah pulls you left, then right, yanking you through openings you would never have seen. Your lungs burn. A stitch blossoms in your side. A hot, stabbing pain. The leather satchel bangs against your hip, the weight of the sextant an agonizing pendulum marking every jarring step. Your thin shoes offer no protection from the rough stones, and you feel a sharp pain as you twist your ankle, a small cry escaping your lips. "I can't!" You gasp, stumbling. Micah doesn't slow. He hooks an arm around your waist, half dragging, half carrying you. "Yes, you can," he grunts, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "They won't take you. I won't let them." His cheerfulness has been burned away, leaving behind a raw, intense focus that is somehow more frightening. This is not a game to him. This is real. You hear the clatter of hooves now, a new and more terrifying sound. A mounted patrol. They will be faster than you. They will run you to ground in these narrow streets like a fox in a chase. Your pessimism, your constant companion, whispers that this is it. This is the end. A foolish dash through a hostile city, led by a man you don't know, to be captured and thrown in a cell. Or worse, the image of the burning house flashes in your mind, the orange flames licking at the night sky. You are not a player in this war. You are kindling. "In here?" Micah shoves you toward the black maw of a narrow passage between two tenements. It's barely wider than your shoulders, choked with refuse and the foul smell of decay. You press yourself against the cold, grimy brick, trying to make yourself smaller, to disappear. Micah stands in front of you, a human shield, his body tense, his head cocked, listening. The horses thunder past the mouth of the alley. You can hear the jingle of their harnesses, the creak of leather, the shouted commands of the riders. "They went toward the river! Cut them off at the ferry landing!" They are close. So close you can smell the sweat of the horses. You hold your breath until your lungs feel they will burst, your heart hammering against your ribs so loudly you're sure they must hear it. Then, they are gone. The sound of their hooves recedes, fading into the city's low hum. For a long moment, neither of you moves. You are slick with the cold sweat, trembling uncontrollably. Micah lets out a long, slow breath. He turns, his face inches from yours in the claustrophobic dark. You can't see his expression, but you can feel the heat radiating from him, the energy of a coiled spring. "That was too close," he says, his voice rough. "My route is compromised. We have to get to the water, now." "Canada," you whisper, the word sounding like a prayer and a curse. "Will we ever?" He cuts you off, not with cruelty, but with an absolute urgency. Don't think about Canada. Don't think about tomorrow. Just think about the next step. He takes your hand, his grip firm and steady. And the one after that. Can you do that? Quote, you look at his silhouette, the outline of the enemy, the man who represents the cause that made you a widow. But his hand in yours is the only solid thing in a world that has dissolved into chaos. You give a single, sharp nod. He leads you on, his pace still quick, but more careful now. He moves with the instinct of a hunter, not a soldier, his senses tuned to the night. He seems to feel the patrols before you see or hear them, pulling you into doorways and behind stacks of barrels moments before they pass. Your earlier suspicion that he was parading you through the city seems absurd now. This is not a tour. This is a desperate flight, and he is as trapped in it as you are. Finally, the suffocating press of the city begins to relent. The air changes, losing the scent of coal smoke and gaining the damp, earthy smell of the river. You can hear it, a low, constant rushing sound beneath the city's din. You emerge from an alley onto a muddy bank, the dark, churning water of the Delaware stretching out before you. The moon, free from the city's haze, casts a pale, shimmering path across the surface. Across the water, the shore of New Jersey is a low, dark line of trees, a shore of impossible safety. Tucked under a tangle of overgrown willow branches is a small, flat-bottomed skiff. It's a pathetic-looking craft, its wood darkened with age and water. It looks as if a strong wave would splinter it to pieces. This is your escape. This is your passage to freedom. It looks like a coffin. This is it, Micah says, his voice low as he pulls the boat from its hiding place, the hull making a soft sucking sound as it releases from the mud. Get in. And be careful. The current is fast here. You hesitate, looking at the fragile boat and the forbidding, swift-moving water. Every instinct screams at you to stay on solid ground, as treacherous as it may be. Martha. He says your name for the first time, and the sound of it in his voice is startling. It's not the familiar, condescending tone of Francis, or the loving murmur of George. It's just a name, spoken by a stranger in the dark. We go now, or we don't go at all. Quote, you gather your skirts and climb unsteadily into the boat, sinking onto the cold, damp bench. The boat rocks violently, and you grab the sides, your knuckles white. Micah pushes off from the bank, mud sucking at his boots, and then he leaps in, landing with a practiced grace that barely disturbs the boat's balance. He takes up the two rough-hewn oars and, with a powerful grunt, digs them into the water. The current grabs you immediately. It's stronger than you imagined, an invisible, malevolent hand pulling you downstream, away from the distant shore. The boat feels like a leaf in a torrent. Micah rows with a desperate, focused rhythm, his back straining with the effort. The muscles in his arms and shoulders bunch and cord, the fabric of his uniform straining at the seams. His breath comes in harsh gasps, his face set in a grim mask of determination. You look back at Philadelphia. The fire you saw earlier is a dying orange ember against the dark skyline. That skyline is your entire life. The church steeple where you were married, the market where you bought your food, the rooftop of the house where you had thought you would grow old. You are watching your whole world recede into the darkness, shrinking with every pull of Micah's oars. The grief you have been holding at bay, suppressed by fear and adrenaline, rises up and threatens to choke you. A single hot tear traces a path through the grime on your cheek. A sudden lurch of the boat snaps you back to the present. The current has caught the bow, swinging you sideways. A wave of cold, black water slaps over the sides, soaking your legs and pooling at your feet. Hold on, Micah yells over the roar of the water. He fights the oar, his knuckles bloody against the rough wood, trying to bring the boat's nose back into the current. The wood of the oarlock groans in protest. For a terrifying moment, you are completely at the mercy of the river, spinning slowly, being pulled further and further from your goal. Micah is losing. Without thinking, you scramble forward, grabbing the small wooden bailer from the bottom of the boat. You begin to scoop out the icy water, your movements frantic and clumsy. It feels like a futile gesture against the encroaching river, but it's something. It's a fight. Micah sees you. He gives a sharp, appreciative nod, then redoubles his efforts. With a final, agonizing heave, he wrenches the boat back into alignment. He is panting, his strength clearly failing, but he doesn't stop. He just keeps rowing, his eyes fixed on the dark line of the opposite shore. In that moment, watching him pour every last ounce of his being into saving you, the labels fall away. He is not a patriot. You are not a loyalist. He is not the antagonist of your story, the cheerful face of the enemy. He is just a man, fighting a river in the dark, for a woman he doesn't know. A bond, thin and fragile as a spider's thread, forms between you and the tiny, tossing boat. It is forged not in words, but in the shared terror, the freezing water sloshing around your ankles, and the desperate rhythmic groan of the oars. Finally, with a jarring scrape, the hull grinds against gravel. You've made it! You are on the other side! Micah ships the oars, his whole body slumping with an exhaustion so profound it seems to be the only thing holding him together. He just sits there for a long moment, his head bowed, dragging air into his lungs. He looks up at you, his face pale in the moonlight, slick with sweat and river spray. His adventurous cheer is gone. His intense focus has softened. All that's left is a deep, weary humanity. "I told you I'd get you across," he says, his voice raspy. He manages a faint echo of his earlier smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes. You can only nod, your throat too tight for words. You climb out of the boat onto the blessedly solid ground of New Jersey, your legs shaking so badly you can barely stand. You turn and look back across the dark water at the city of Philadelphia. It seems a world away now, a cluster of distant, indifferent lights. It is no longer your home. It is a memory. You clutch the satchel to your chest, the cold weight of the sextant inside a solid, painful reminder of all you have lost. But you are alive, and standing beside you, breathing heavily in the cold night air, is the enemy who saved you. The journey to Canada is still a vast, terrifying unknown, but you have survived the first step. The words hang between you, thin and inadequate in the vast, quiet darkness. He saved you. The man whose compatriots had, in a single, careless act of war, destroyed your world, had just risked his own life to pull you from the wreckage. The irony is a bitter pill, but you swallow it down, too exhausted for anything but the raw, aching truth of the moment. You are here. You are alive. Micah pushes himself to his feet, swaying slightly. He offers you a hand, and this time, you take it without hesitation. His palm is rough and calloused, but it's a lifeline. He helps you up the muddy bank and onto a carpet of damp pine needles under the cover of the trees. The ground feels impossibly steady beneath your feet. "They won't follow," he says, his voice still a rasp. He gestures back across the churning black water. "Not in the dark. Not across a river this fast. By the time they organize a crossing, we'll be gone." He starts walking, not looking back to see if you are following. You know you are. There is nowhere else to go. He moves away from the river, pushing deeper into the woods. The trees close in around you, their dark branches blotting out the moon and the last lingering glow of Philadelphia. The air grows still and cold, smelling of damp earth and pine. It feels ancient and impartial, a wilderness that cares nothing for kings or congresses. Micah stops at what looks like an impenetrable wall of undergrowth, but he reaches down and pulls aside a thick, gnarled branch, revealing a dark opening. A path. It is no wider than a deer trail, barely visible in the gloom. But it is deliberate, worn down by feet that knew how to move unseen. A smuggler's path. A fugitive's road. A beacon. "This will take us north," he says. "It avoids the main roads. It won't be easy, but it will be safe." Quote. You nod, stepping past him onto the path. The journey begins with that single step. It is a step away from Martha Washington, the surveyor's wife, a woman defined by her home and her husband. You don't know who you are stepping toward, but you know you are moving. The next few days blur into a grueling rhythm of walking. You move from the pre-dawn gray until the last light fails, stopping only for brief rests to eat the hardtack and dried apples Micah carries in a rucksack you hadn't noticed before. You drink from cold, clear streams, the water so frigid it makes your teeth ache. You sleep huddled together for warmth under a shared oilcloth, the hard ground your mattress and the endless forest your roof. You barely speak. Words are a luxury you can't afford. All your energy is poured into the simple, agonizing act of putting one foot in front of the other. Your twisted ankle throbs with a dull, persistent pain, but you learn to walk on it, to push past the hurt. Your muscles, soft from a life spent indoors, scream in protest, then harden into a wiry strength you never knew they possessed. In the silence of the long walk, your mind, finally free from the immediate terror of pursuit, begins to work. It replays the last few days with a horrifying clarity, the sharp, impatient knock on the door, Francis's manipulative eyes, calculating the value of your grief, the world dissolving as he spoke of a skirmish, of George being mistaken. That word still grates, mistaken. As if his life was a miscalculation on a ledger, a line drawn in the wrong place. The jealous, pessimistic part of you, the part you were always so ashamed of, tries to whisper its familiar, toxic refrain. I knew it. I knew his work would take him from you. But the whisper has lost its power. The jealousy feels small now, a petty grievance, in the face of such a vast and violent loss. What replaces it is a grief so profound it feels like a physical part of you, as permanent as a limb. You clutch the satchel, the sextant, inside a dense, cold weight against your hip. You remember the pride in his eyes when he showed you how it worked, how it could capture a piece of the heavens to tell you where you stood on earth. You had feigned interest, secretly resenting the instrument for the attention it stole from you. Now, it is all you have left of him, a tool for finding one's way, clutched by a woman who is utterly lost. With each mile you walk, the layers of your old life are stripped away. The fear of the patriots, once an all-consuming fire, cools to a bed of wary embers. They are still a threat, a phantom on the horizon, but they are no longer the monster under your bed. The city, your home, becomes a distant memory, a place that happened to someone else. You are being unmade and remade by the simple, brutal act of walking north. You watch Micah. He moves through the wilderness with an easy competence, reading the landscape like a map. He is no longer the cheerful, adventurous artilleryman. The fire in the city, the frantic chase, the desperate crossing of the river, it has burned that away. What remains is a quiet, sober man who is simply trying to survive. Same as you. You wonder about him. Why did he help you? What did he see in your face in that dark alley that made him turn his back on his own side, risk his own life? Was it pity? Or did he, in your terror, see a reflection of the same chaos that was consuming everyone, patriot and loyalist alike? You don't ask. The unspoken space between you feels too fragile to bear the weight of such questions. You just watch him, and you walk. One afternoon, you stop to rest on a rocky outcrop that overlooks a wide, rolling valley. The trees are different here, more fir and birch, the air sharper. A sense of change is upon you. Micah is pointing, not at you, but toward the hazy blue-green line of hills far to the north. There, he says, his voice quiet. Another day's walk, maybe two. That's it. Canada. The word doesn't sound like the other side of the moon anymore. It looks like a line of hills. A sanctuary. A promise of solid ground. You stare at it, this border you have been walking toward, bleeding for, and feel a wave of emotion so powerful it buckles your knees. It isn't joy, it isn't relief, not yet. It is the overwhelming, crushing weight of arrival. The last part of the journey is the hardest. Every step is a monumental effort. The nearness of your goal makes the remaining distance feel infinite. The emotional and physical toll of the flight settles upon you like a shroud. You are a ghost of the woman who opened her door to Francis Marion what feels like a lifetime ago. You are thinner, harder, your face etched with lines of grief and exhaustion, your hands calloused, your eyes holding a haunted, weary wisdom. You have lost everything, your husband, your home, your country, your name, and yet, as you take those last, painful steps, a new feeling begins to surface, pushing up through the grief and uncertainty like a stubborn spring shoot. It is resilience. You survived. You, the humble surveyor's wife, who thought herself weak and prone to pessimism, had been dragged through the heart of the revolution's fire and had not been consumed. You had navigated the treachery of your own blood, faced down the enemy, crossed a raging river in a leaky boat, and walked hundreds of miles through an unforgiving wilderness. The fear is gone, burned out of you by the sheer act of endurance. In its place is a cold, quiet determination. You have been brought to zero. You have nothing. But from nothing, you can build. You crest a final hill, and the path opens into a small clearing. Below you, a river, smaller and calmer than the Delaware, snakes through the valley. On the other side, you can see a small cluster of buildings, a plume of smoke rising from a chimney. A red flag, the British ensign, hangs limply from a pole. It is a startling, almost shocking sight. A symbol of the very authority that indirectly cost you everything, now offering you sanctuary. This is it. The border. Safety. You stop at the edge of the clearing, Micah stopping beside you. The journey is over. The frantic chase, the desperate flight, it ends here, in this quiet patch of northern woods. The uncertainty of what lies ahead is a physical presence. A vast, empty landscape stretching before you. You have no money to speak of, no friends, no home to go to. You are a refugee, a widow, a stranger in a strange land. The future is a blank map. Its territory is uncharted, its dangers unknown. But you are not afraid. You look at your hands. They are dirty and scratched, the nails broken, but they are steady. You think of the sextant in your bag, a tool for charting a course. You have lost the man you loved, but you have found a strength you never knew you possessed. You have lost your place in the world, but you have found your feet. You look across the river, at the foreign flag and the unknown life that awaits you, and for the first time since that terrible knock on the door, you feel the faintest glimmer of something you had thought was lost to you forever. Hope. You are left to ponder what the future may hold, a future free from violence, but one you must now survey and build, entirely on your own. Micah does not cross with you. He remains on the American side of the clearing, a shadow against the dark woods that nearly killed you both. The space between you is no longer a raging river, but a quiet, final border. There is nothing left to say. The debt you owe him is too vast for words, and the chasm between your worlds is too wide to be bridged by them. He gives you a single, slow nod, a gesture of respect, of farewell, of a shared ordeal that will forever bind you and forever keep you apart. You watch as he turns and melts back into the trees, a ghost returning to a haunted land. You are truly, utterly alone. You turn your back on the United States of America, with the leather satchel clutched in your hand. You walk down the gentle slope toward the river and the British flag. The crossing is shallow, the water clear and cold, and a stout, bearded man in a plaid wool shirt pulls a small, flat-bottomed ferry across for a few of your last coins. He doesn't ask your name or your story. Your face, gaunt and grim, and your mud-stained, tattered clothes are story enough. In these northern lands, they are becoming a common sight. The small settlement is little more than a trading post, and a handful of rough-hewn cabins clinging to the riverbank, a temporary haven for the displaced. You find a room for rent above the post, a small, bare space with a narrow bed, a single window, and a small stone hearth. The price is a week of work, scrubbing floors and mending clothes for the proprietor, a taciturn woman whose own eyes hold the same weary shadow you see in the mirror. With the little money you have left, you buy flour, salt, a slab of bacon, and an axe. That first autumn is a blur of labor. Your days are spent not in quiet reflection, but in the relentless, physical work of survival. You chop wood, your arms and back protesting with a deep, satisfying ache. You learn the sharp, clean scent of split pine, and the dull thud of your axe biting into birch. The blisters that form on your hands are a testament to your own effort, proof that you can provide for yourself. You walk for hours in the surrounding woods, not aimlessly, but with purpose, gathering fallen branches for kindling, foraging for late-season berries you see the birds eating. The Canadian wilderness is nothing like the tamed, surveyed woods of Pennsylvania. It is vast, raw, and magnificent. The trees blaze with colors so violent they make your heart ache. Scarlet maples, golden poplars, deep orange oaks, all set against the stoic dark green of the pines. The beauty is a physical blow, a stunning, silent sermon on life and decay. You watch a carpet of crimson leaves fall and rot, knowing they will feed the soil for next year's growth. It is a lesson you absorb without thinking, a truth that sinks into your bones. The end of one thing is the beginning of another. The memories of Philadelphia, of the fire and the fear, begin to lose their sharp edges, softened by the rustling of a million falling leaves. Then comes the snow. It arrives not gently, but as a silent, overwhelming force, a white siege that buries the world. The river freezes. The vibrant colors of autumn vanish, replaced by a stark palette of white, black, and gray. The silence is absolute, broken only by the moan of the wind in the eaves and the crackle of your fire. You are snowed in, a prisoner in your small room, and for the first time since your flight, you are forced to be still. The stillness is terrifying. With no labor to distract you, no path to walk, the grief you have held at bay descends in full force. It is a weight, a presence in the room with you. You sit by your small window for days, watching the endless, hypnotic fall of snow, and you finally allow yourself to think of George. You remember not just his death, but his life. You remember the way his eyes would crinkle when he smiled, the low rumble of his laugh, the calloused feel of his hand in yours. The jealousy you once harbored seems like a distant, childish thing now, a foolish resentment of a passion you failed to understand. One afternoon, when the gray light is already fading, you open the leather satchel. Your fingers bypass the pearls and the brooch and close around the cold, heavy brass of the sextant. You pull it out, its intricate gears and mirrors gleaming in the firelight. You remember George trying to explain it, his voice full of an almost boyish enthusiasm. "It's about knowing where you are, Martha," he had said. "By looking at something constant, something far away. You find your place on this earth by looking to the heavens." You didn't understand then. You do now. You hold the instrument, this piece of him, and you weep. You weep for him, for the life you lost, for the home that is no longer yours. You cry until your body is racked with dry, shuddering sobs, until there are no tears left. The snow falls outside, blanketing the world, muffling all sound. In the deep, profound silence of the Canadian winter, you let your old life die. You let it be buried peacefully under a soft, clean blanket of white. When the thaw comes, it is gradual, then sudden. You hear it first, the drip, drip, drip of melting snow from the roof. Then, one morning, you see a patch of dark, wet earth where the snow has receded. A week later, the river groans and cracks, the ice breaking apart with a sound like cannon fire, a distant echo of the war you left behind. But this sound isn't one of destruction. It's the sound of release. You walk out into a world being reborn. The air is soft and smells of damp soil and awakening life. You see the first green shoots pushing their way through the mulch of last year's leaves, impossibly fragile and stubbornly persistent. You hear the song of a robin, a sound so simple and so full of promise it brings a different kind of tears to your eyes. You find a small, abandoned plot of land behind your cabin, choked with weeds and stones. You take your axe not to chop wood for a fire to keep you from freezing, but to clear the saplings. You use your hands to pull the weeds and pile the stones into a low wall. You trade the last of your mother's pearls not for passage or survival, but for a small sack of seeds, beans, squash, corn. You turn the soil over with a borrowed spade, your muscles, now strong and sure, working in a steady rhythm. You are not a surveyor's wife. You are not a refugee. You are a woman planting a garden. You are creating, not just enduring. With each seed you press into the dark, rich earth, you are burying the past and planting a future. A future free from the dictates of kings and the rhetoric of rebels. A future defined not by loyalty to a flag, but by the turning of the seasons, the feel of the sun on your back, and the satisfaction of coaxing life from the soil with your own two hands. The pessimism that was once your constant companion has withered. What use is it here? It cannot predict the rain, nor can it stop the frost. It is a useless weight. The humble life you once lived in Philadelphia feels like a dream, but you now understand that humility is not weakness. It is the quiet strength of a sapling that bends in the wind but does not break. You stand at the edge of your small, burgeoning garden as the long spring evening settles over the valley. The sky is a gentle wash of pink and gold. Across the river, the lights of the settlement are beginning to glow, small points of warmth in the deepening twilight. This land is no longer a foreign wilderness. It is your sanctuary. It is your home. You do not know what the coming years will bring, what new challenges will rise with the sun. The map of your life is still largely blank. But you have a compass now, a sense of your own true north. You are no longer looking to the heavens to find your place. You are building it, right here on earth. Years pass. They do not march by in grand processions, but slip away in the quiet turning of seasons. 3 times you have planted your garden, and 3 times you have harvested its bounty. The small plot of land behind your cabin is no longer a desperate experiment but a reliable friend, its soil dark and forgiving. Your cabin, once a stranger's shelter, is now truly yours, its wooden walls imbued with the scent of your wood smoke, its single room arranged with the quiet efficiency of a life pared down to its essentials. The axe is an extension of your arm. The feel of the seasons is a calendar in your bones. The silence of the forest is no longer a void, but a language you have come to understand. But peace is not the same as forgetting. The past is not a country you have left behind, but a landscape that has become part of your own. There are days, especially in the long golden light of late summer, when an echo finds you. You will be pulling a stubborn root from the garden, your hands deep in the cool earth, and a sudden, sharp memory of George will surface with the clarity of a reflection in still water. You see him not as a casualty of war, but as he was, bent over a map at his drafting table. A smudge of ink on his cheek, his brow furrowed in concentration. The memory comes not with the heavy shroud of that first winter's grief, but as a quick, sharp pang, a phantom limb that aches with a loss so profound it still steals your breath. You pause, your knuckles resting on the soil, and allow the wave to wash over you and recede, leaving the salt sting of tears in its wake. One afternoon, a new family arrives. It is no longer the shocking event it once was. A slow, steady trickle of the dispossessed has thickened the settlement into a small, resilient town. But this arrival is different. It is a single man, leading a gaunt-looking ox that pulls a cart piled high with a few meager possessions. He is not a Loyalist gentleman who misjudged the political winds, nor a merchant whose fortunes were tied to the crown. He is a farmer, his face and hands weathered like old leather, his eyes holding a weariness that you recognize instantly. He is a man who has been ground down by the war itself, regardless of its name or cause. That evening you see him sitting alone on a log near the riverbank, staring south across the water as if he could see all the way back to the life he lost. You find yourself walking toward him, a tin cup of hot, steeped mint in your hand, an offering. He takes it with a grateful nod, his name, Elias, spoken in a voice rough from disuse. He tells you his story, not all at once, but in fragments, as the twilight deepens. He had owned a farm in the New York hills, land his family had worked for 2 generations. When the war came, he wanted no part of it. King, Congress, they're just names to a man watching the sky for rain, he says, his voice low and bitter. But the war came for him anyway. A patriot press gang took him from his fields, put a musket in his hands, and told him he was fighting for liberty. He fought because he had no choice. He saw men die for that word, he saw men kill for it. We were on patrol once, he says, his gaze lost in the dark, rushing water. Up near the Mohawk River, we came upon a small party. Surveyors, they said, but our captain was convinced they were mapping for the British Army. He was a good man, the captain, believed in the cause, truly. But he was scared. We were all scared. Fear makes you see spies in every shadow. The world tilts. The cup in your hands grows cold. Schuylkill, Mohawk. The river changes, but the story is the same. Mistaken. The word hangs in the air between you, a ghost made of breath. You look at this man, this enemy soldier, and you do not see a monster. You see a farmer, stolen from his land, steeped in a fear so potent it turned other men into phantoms, into targets. You see the other side of your own tragedy, and it is just as human, just as wretched. They never even raised their weapons, Elias whispers, shame and grief twisting his face. We opened fire? It was over in a minute. He falls silent, the memory too heavy for any more words. He later deserted, he explains, not out of cowardice, but because he could no longer carry the weight of a liberty bought with the blood of men who might have only been mapping a creek. You say nothing of George. You don't have to. Your shared silence is a testament to the war's indiscriminate cruelty. You had always thought of the men who killed your husband as a faceless patriot militia, a monstrous monolith of revolutionary fervor, but now you see them as they might have been. Men like Elias, tired and frightened, their judgment clouded by the smoke of a conflict that burned hotter than any man's reason. You walk back to your cabin under a canopy of stars, the kind of brilliant, piercing stars you never saw in the city haze. This sextant. You retrieve it from the small wooden chest where you keep your few treasures. It feels different in your hands now. It is not just the last remnant of your husband, a symbol of your grief. It is a testament to his belief in order, in precision, in a world that could be measured and understood, a world that Elias and his captain, in their fear, could no longer see. And then you think of Micah Walker, the cheerful artilleryman, the enemy who saved you. You see him again in the dark alley, his grin catching the moonlight, a beacon of reckless sanity in a city gone mad. You remember his effortless navigation of the city's underbelly, his calm in the face of a burning building, his desperate, muscle-shredding fight against the Delaware's current. He was a patriot. He wore the uniform of the men who killed George. He fought for the very cause that had made you a widow and a refugee. The contradiction of it, once a source of confusion and suspicion, now settles into a complex, uncomfortable truth. Micah was not an exception to the rule. He was the rule. Elias was the rule. The men who tarred and feathered their neighbors and the men who sheltered them were both the rule. The war was not a simple equation of good and evil, of right and wrong. It was a crucible, a terrible fire that brought out the worst and the best in people, often in the very same person. It was a chaotic storm of conviction, fear, opportunism, and grace. Francis Marion, using your grief to line his own pockets. Micah Walker, risking his life for an enemy. Elias, the farmer turned soldier, haunted by his part in the bloodshed. Your own humble, quiet husband, killed for the simple, orderly act of drawing a line on a map. All these truths, these echoes, could exist at once. To deny one was to misunderstand them all. Peace, you realize, is not found in burying the past or in choosing a side. It is found in accepting the unbearable complexity of it all. It is found in holding the sextant in one hand, acknowledging the precise, ordered world George believed in, while understanding the chaotic, fearful world that Elias lived in, and honoring the quiet, inexplicable act of grace from a man like Micah, who navigated the treacherous space between the two. You placed the sextant not back in its box, but on the mantel above your small hearth. It is no longer an object of mourning, but an instrument of contemplation. A reminder that finding your way is not about having a perfect map, but about learning to read the shifting landscape, to navigate the currents of your own life, and to look for the constant, distant stars of truth, no matter how chaotic the world on the ground may be. The echoes of the past will never fade completely, you know that now. But they are no longer the screams of a nightmare. They are the quiet, complex harmonies of a life that has been lost, and a life that has been found. You have surveyed the wilderness of your own grief, and you have, at last, charted a place to stand. The sextant remains on the mantel, a silent witness. It is no longer a source of pain, but a point of anchor. Like the North Star, it was designed to measure. Its brass form catches the morning light and reflects it back into the small room, a daily, gentle reminder. You no longer flinch from its presence. Sometimes, you run a cloth over its cool surface, not just to remove the dust, but as a quiet act of communion with the man who loved it, and with the woman you have become. The life you now lead is measured not in miles charted or borders crossed, but in the steady rhythm of your own breath and the patient turning of the earth. The garden is where you find your liturgy. In the spring, you press seeds into the soil with a reverence you once reserved for prayer books. In the summer, you wage a patient war against thistle and bindweed, your hands stained with earth, your back aching with a fatigue that feels clean and honest. You learn the personalities of the plants, the belligerent sprawl of the squash vines, the stoic, upright dignity of the cornstalks, the shy, yielding nature of the beans as they climb the poles you provide. This small patch of cleared land is your kingdom, your canvas, and your sanctuary. It has taught you the most fundamental of lessons, that life is tenacious, that from rot and ruin something new and nourishing can grow. You have been brought to zero, but here, in the rich, dark soil, you have found that zero is the beginning of everything. Your strength is a quiet thing, forged in the crucible of your flight. It is not the brittle armor of bitterness, but the flexible, resilient strength of a willow branch. The townsfolk see it, though they would not name it. They see it in the steady swing of your axe, in the calm way you met the eyes of a wolf that wandered too close to the settlement last winter, in the gentle firmness with which you helped set the broken leg of Elias's ox. You have become a point of stillness in their small, bustling world of exiles. They come to you not for pronouncements, but for the quiet comfort of your presence, for the unspoken understanding in your eyes that says, I know. I have been there too. Elias especially seeks out your silence. Your friendship is a thing of few words, built on the shared ground of unspoken tragedy. You help him build a stone wall at the edge of his new field, your hands working in a synchronized rhythm, lifting and placing the heavy, rounded stones pulled from the soil. He never speaks of the Mohawk River again, and you never speak of the Schuylkill. You do not need to. The knowledge of it rests between you, not as a barrier, but as a bridge of shared sorrow. One evening, as you share a simple meal of baked squash and salted bacon by his fire, he looks at you and says, "You seem at peace, Martha." Quote, you consider his words, looking into the dancing flames. "Peace is not the absence of ghosts, Elias," you reply, your voice soft. "It is learning to live with them. The ghosts are always there. They are in the slant of the afternoon sun that reminds you of Philadelphia, in the cry of a loon across the water that sounds for a moment like a scream in a burning city. But they no longer have the power to haunt you. They are simply part of the landscape of your memory, a testament to the journey that brought you here." One day, nearly a year after your conversation with Elias, a traveler comes up from the south, a fur trapper with news that ripples through the settlement like a stone tossed in a calm pond. The war is over, truly over. A treaty has been signed in a city called Paris. America is its own country. The king has relinquished his claim. You stand by the riverbank, listening to the excited, angry, and confused chatter of the other Loyalists. Some speak of return, of reclaiming their property. Others spit on the ground, cursing rebels' victory. A wave of profound weariness washes over you. King, Congress, America, Britain, they are just words. You have seen what men do in the name of such words. You have felt the cost of their causes in the marrow of your bones. The news of peace does not fill you with joy or sorrow, but with a deep, solemn finality. A chapter has closed. A great bloody wound on the face of the world can finally begin to scar over. You retreat to your cabin, to the quiet company of your own thoughts. You understand now what the revolution truly was. It was not just a glorious story of liberty, nor a tragic tale of rebellion. It was a messy human catastrophe of conviction. It was the story of Francis, whose only conviction was his own advancement. It was the story of the men who set fire to the printer's house, their belief in freedom so fierce it became a form of tyranny. It was the story of Elias, a good man made to do a terrible thing in the name of a cause he was forced to adopt. And it was the story of Micah Walker. Micah. His name comes to you unbidden, as it often does. The cheerful artilleryman, the enemy who saved you. You finally see the truth of him. He was not a contradiction. He was the revolution itself, in all its terrible, beautiful complexity. He believed in his cause, in liberty and a new nation. But his humanity was not eclipsed by it. He saw not a loyalist or a Tory in that dark alley. He saw a terrified woman, and he chose compassion over doctrine. He chose to save a life, even if it was the life of his enemy. His act was not one of defiance against his cause, but the ultimate expression of it, a belief in the inherent worth of an individual. That, you realize, is the lesson etched into your soul, the fragility of it all. How quickly a neighbor can become an enemy, how easily a principle can curdle into prejudice. Peace is not a destination you arrive at, like this settlement in Canada. It is not a treaty signed by men in powdered wigs across an ocean. It is a constant, difficult daily practice. It is the choice to see the humanity in Elias's shame. It is the choice to extend a hand to a stranger. It is the choice, every single day, to tend your own garden rather than casting stones into your neighbor's. You have been remade. The pessimistic, jealous woman who resented her husband's work is a ghost you can barely recognize. You see her now with a tender sadness. She was a woman trapped in a small room, her world defined by four walls, her happiness dependent on the presence of another. The revolution, in its terrible violence, broke down those walls and cast you out into the wilderness. And in that wilderness you found that your own 2 feet were strong enough. You learned that your own 2 hands could build and plant and sustain. You have gained a self-knowledge that is as solid and real as the stone hearth in your cabin. You are no longer defined by who you have lost, but by the strength you have found. You stand and walk to the window, looking out at the valley. The sun is setting, painting the western sky in hues of soft rose and deep violet. Your garden is quiet, its work for the day done. Beyond it the forest rises, dark and deep. It is no longer a place of fear, but one of solace. You have learned its paths, its secrets, its rhythms. You belong here. This land has asked nothing of you but your labor, and in return it has given you back your life. The future is still an uncharted territory, a blank map waiting to be filled. But you are no longer afraid of the unknown. You have a compass now, forged in fire and grief, and it points not toward a king or a country, but toward a quiet, steady inner peace. You are Martha, a woman who survived a war, a widow who built a home, a gardener who coaxes life from the stubborn earth. You are a testament to the enduring, resilient, and unbreakable spirit of a single human soul. And as the first star of evening appears in the darkening sky, a constant point of light in the vast expanse, you know with a certainty that fills every part of your being that you are ready for whatever comes next. The years fold into one another like pages in a well-read book, each creased with the memory of a season. The world you left behind, a world of politics and pamphlets, of simmering rage and sudden violence, fades not into nothingness, but into the quiet hum of a distant story. Your new life is a poem written in the language of small things. It is the heft of the axe in your hands and the clean, sharp scent of split pine. It is the surprising warmth of the sun on the back of your neck in early spring. It is the taste of a potato pulled from the earth you tilled yourself, baked in the coals of a fire you built, its simple, earthy flavor more satisfying than any feast you remember from Philadelphia. Happiness is a word you no longer reach for. It feels too grand, too ambitious. What you have found instead is something quieter, more durable, a deep and abiding contentment. It lives in the sinews of your arms, now strong from chopping wood and hauling water. It resides in the steady, patient rhythm of your own heart. You had once been a surveyor's wife, a life defined by waiting, by the empty space beside you. Now your life is defined only by the rising and setting of the sun, and the work your own two hands can accomplish in the hours between. The frantic pace you once knew, the constant, low-grade anxiety of city life, feels like a fever dream. Here, time is not a commodity to be spent, but a river to be lived in, its currents slow and deep. The settlement grows, but slowly. It remains a place of quiet people who carry their pasts like invisible packs. You know them by the cadence of their footsteps and the set of their jaws. There is Elias, whose fields now yield enough corn to share. There is the taciturn woman who runs the post, who one day hands you a length of warm wool fabric with a curt nod that is as good as a declaration of friendship. You are part of a community stitched together not by a common flag, but by the common experience of having been broken and remade. You are all kintsugi, your cracks mended with the gold of resilience. As the sun begins its slow descent on a late summer afternoon, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across your garden, you sit on the rough-hewn bench outside your cabin door. The day's work is done. The air is cool and smells of pine and the coming dusk. You look down at your hands, resting in your lap. They are not the hands of the woman who fled Philadelphia. They are chapped, the nails short and often edged with soil. The skin is a map of small scars and calluses, each one a memory of labor, a testament to survival. These hands, you think, are my own. The quiet whisper of the wind through the tall pines carries the memories, as it always does in these liminal hours between day and night. It is not a storm. Not anymore. It is a murmur. You hear George's voice, not with the sharp agony of fresh grief, but with a gentle, wistful sorrow. You remember his passion for his work, the way he believed the world could be made sensible, ordered, and known through lines and numbers. You touch the place on the mantle where the sextant sits, a silent monument to a faith and reason that a world at war could not abide. The jealousy you once felt is long gone, replaced by a deep, aching understanding. He was not married to his charts. He was a man in love with the world's beautiful, hidden logic. The wind shifts, and for a moment, you can almost smell the fish and brine of the Philadelphia docks. Francis, your cousin. His memory is no longer a source of rage, but of a kind of weary pity. A man so small in his ambitions, so blind to anything but his own petty advantage. He was a creature of the chaos, a scavenger feeding on the fear of others. He taught you a valuable, if painful, lesson, that sometimes the greatest dangers do not wear the enemy's uniform, but instead wear the familiar face of family. You think of Elias, your friend, a man who carries the weight of a single terrible minute for the rest of his days. In his story you found not an enemy, but a mirror to your own grief. The war was not a distant battle between armies. It was a farmer on a dusty road, afraid and confused, pulling a trigger. It was a surveyor falling in the woods, his instruments scattered in the leaves. It was two sides of the same tarnished coin of human fear. In understanding his tragedy, you found a way to soothe your own. And then, as the last sliver of the sun bleeds out behind the western hills, painting the sky in strokes of bruised purple and soft gray, you think of Micah Walker, the cheerful artilleryman, the fulcrum on which your life pivoted. For years, he was a paradox you could not solve, a patriot who saved a loyalist, a soldier who showed mercy. Now you see him clearly. He was not a contradiction. He was hope, embodied. He was proof that even in the heart of a conflict that demanded you choose a side, a man could still choose to be human first. His adventurous spirit was not madness. It was a radical belief that a single act of grace could matter more than any battle. You owe him your life, a debt you can never repay except by living it well, by honoring the choice he made in that dark alley. You hope, with a quiet sincerity, that he survived the war he fought so fiercely. You hope he found a peace as profound as the one you now hold. You have endured. You, Martha, have been stripped of your name, your home, your husband, your country. You were cast into the fire, and you did not burn. You walked out of the ashes, stronger, quieter, more wholly yourself than you had ever been. The future no longer looms as a vast, terrifying unknown. It is simply tomorrow. Tomorrow you will rise with the sun. You will tend your garden. You will feel the warmth on your skin and the good ache in your muscles. You will share a cup of mint tea with a friend. You will live. These are the quiet joys, the small, solid bricks with which you have built a new life, a life of peace. The first star appears, a sharp pinprick of silver in the deep velvet of the sky. It is time. You rise from the bench and go inside, the cabin greeting you with the familiar scent of wood smoke and dried herbs. You bank the embers in the hearth, a final, careful task to ensure a spark of warmth remains for the morning. You pull the heavy quilt over you in the narrow bed, the weight a comforting presence in the quiet dark. Outside, the wind continues its soft, eternal whisper through the trees, a lullaby of memory and time. The ghosts are sleeping now. You are safe. Remember, you made it through 1776. Good night, sweet dreams.